This podcast is brought to you by Aetna. Learn how Aetna is working to build a healthier world by visiting aetnastory.com.
Dora, have you given any thought as to how you want to bring in 2020? I can't believe we're coming into a new year.
Yes, we're hosting, in partnership with the Gasparilla Inn, a wellness experience on January 27th in Boca Grande, Florida. What's going to happen down there?
We're going to be doing cooking demonstrations. We're going to be walking on the beach. We're going to be doing yoga every morning. We're going to be learning from world-class teachers on how to take better care of ourselves. I mean, it's just going to be amazing.
So go to our website, bbrconsulting.us, to learn more and to sign up. And we look forward to seeing you on January 27th.
Can't wait to see you all there.
People are yearning for information. Having the opportunity to encourage people and to educate people and inspire people.
It's amazing to be able to say we'll carve out time to take care of ourselves.
There's something for everyone. We're thrilled to have World Series national champion Ryan Zimmerman here in the studio with us today. Ryan was born in North Carolina and eventually moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, which is where his passion for baseball took off and later led him to play at the University of Virginia. He is nicknamed Mr. National as he has been a member of the Washington Nationals since his debut on September 1st, 2005. Ryan Zimmerman was drafted in the first round as the 4th overall pick by the Nationals. Since then, Ryan has broken so many records, helped lead the team to their first ever World Series 2019 win, and is truly a hometown hero. Ryan, we are so happy you're here with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, we have a lot of great guests on Health Gig. But you're our first world champion. So,
yes, so welcome.
Right.
Welcome. We are absolutely thrilled. And so we thought we'd begin by asking you, how did your baseball journey begin? And did you always want to be a professional baseball player?
Baseball for me, I guess, started like it does for everybody. You know, you play in the backyard, you play t-ball. Both of my parents were athletes. Both of my parents never let me and my brother be inside. So we were always outside doing something, whether it was baseball, football, or just making up. We were always outside. So growing up, I played a ton of sports. I wasn't, solely playing baseball until probably high school. So yeah, I mean, I don't really think I knew what I was going to do until college almost. I wasn't very highly recruited out of high school. University of Virginia was the only, I guess, big school that came, and they came really, really late. So baseball I was kind of a late bloomer, I guess, if you want to call it that. To me, to go to school, to have that college experience where you get away from your parents, you get to learn how to live on your own with other kids doing it at the same time, and to get to go to school because, the truth is, it's probably not going to work out. You're not going to become a professional baseball player.
Right.
And if they're going to pay for you to go ahead and get your degree or work towards it, say you go 3 years like I did, then go play baseball and it doesn't work out. You only have a year of school left, and then, you're prepared for the real world, as we like to call it, because baseball is not the real world. But, I did my 3 years and haven't been back since.
Right.
Do you have friends from college still? Some guys that you played ball with back then? And
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we keep in touch. We do a good job of, with the text messaging, the group text stuff. We do a fantasy football league that helps us keep in touch. Heather and I were just actually at a wedding the weekend after Christmas in Charleston for one of my baseball buddies. So we all keep in touch, and you create such a bond that I guess it's like a frat or a sorority. I mean, you're with those guys so much. I mean, when everyone goes on spring break, we're at school. Whenever, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about sports. So starting at a young age, and obviously now professionally, you devote so much time to it that you miss out. You sacrifice a lot of things, and it's well worth it, and I would never change anything. But, I haven't done anything in the summer for fun. Really for fun since I was probably 15 or 16 years old. So I'll hopefully play a couple more years, and then honestly, I think I'm going to be excited to be able to go on like a family vacation during the summer
Right.
somewhere. We always have to go in the winter somewhere warm, and
Right.
our
Right. Although
our
this
travels are
summer-
restricted a little bit.
This summer you
Exactly.
came and visited
Yes,
us up in Maine, and because you were injured.
yeah, and the All-Star break. So
The All-Star,
the
right.
All-Star break, if you're not at the All-Star game, you get basically from that, you play on Sunday, and then you don't have to be back usually until Thursday. So
Yeah.
that's our big break. People don't realize how
Yeah.
many games we play, I think, and talking to people and being here for such a long time, we've created relationships that are completely not due to baseball, which I think is awesome, and part of the reason why I love playing in the same area for such a long period of time. I'll have friends that I will be
Yeah.
friends with long after baseball is over, but you start talking to these people, and I don't people, oh, so like what time do you show up to the field? Do you show up at like 5:30 or 6 and then you play and you go home? Like, no, I leave my house at like 1:30. So we're basically putting in a 9 to 5. It's just from 1 to midnight, and so everything's pushed back, but it's just such a grind. I mean, we play, it's like it usually comes out to like it's 162 games in right around 185 days.
You bring up a good point. We all do see it as a game, and it's what you do. It's your job. So it's kind of, from our perspective, it's like, wow, it's, but you're working. You're like out there making a living and
Well,
doing what you have to do.
yeah, and it's a fine line with us as well, because the reason why you got into baseball is because you loved the game. And all of us still love the game. When you learn the business side of it, you see teammates, be traded, be, cut, or, essentially fired, I guess is the easier way to explain it for people who don't know about baseball. You realize that there is a business side to it as well. And you have to kind of learn how to marry those two opposing views. But at the end of the day, it's still fun.
Yeah.
I get to play baseball for a living. It's hard work, but it should be. I mean, I think my dad always used to tell me, someone's trying to take your job just like anyone else. You have to continue to have fun and enjoy it, but at the same time, you do have to work hard. And just like anything else, if you don't work hard and perform, then someone else is going to take your job.
How do you do that and sustain that kind of for 15 years in your case? I mean, stay at sort of physically your top.
You continually
Physically or mentally.
evolve.
Yeah.
I think you always have to learn. You can never be set in your ways. I think the people that are lucky enough to play for a long time obviously are talented, but the beautiful thing about baseball too is the most talented people don't always pan out. Like you were talking about the mental side of it, baseball is a huge mental game. Baseball, golf, I think are similar, where it's such a grind. It's such a, just a mental, all year long, you're thinking, you're grinding it out. So you have to have that side of the game as well. Just pure talent doesn't carry you all the way.
Have you always had that, the mental aspect of it, as
So
a
like
youngster and in college?
When
or-
I was saying I was sort of a late bloomer, I was young. So I have a September birthday, and my parents, now that I have 2 kids, I know why my parents were like, you're going to school. We're not waiting till next year. They wanted to get me out of the house. When I graduated high school, I was 17. So that first part of that first semester in college, I was only 17 years old. So physically, sports-wise, I was always kind of a year behind the people I was playing with. So physically, my maturity was lacking. So I had to make up for it, I think, mentally, and learn the game and be in the right places and try and find an advantage over the kids that were physically ahead of me. So I think that really helped my development, because once my physical side caught up, I was ahead.
You had the mental
side, and then, you put those together, and now we're here 15 years later
15
talking
years
about it.
later, and you're Mr. National.
Yeah.
Do you like to be called Mr. National?
All that stuff, and Heather will tell you this too, I shy away from all that stuff because it doesn't make me feel awkward. I just hate talking about myself. I love talking about baseball. I love talking about the team, and baseball is such a team sport, and there's so many other people that have done amazing things for the organization and the city. But it is cool for me to be able to have played my entire career in one place. I think I'm very grateful for that. And it's in this day and age, it just doesn't happen. Not because people don't want it to happen. It's just it takes sacrifices on both sides.
Speaking of the mental aspect of baseball, what do you do to prepare to play?
I think a lot of it has evolved as my career. When I got called up in September of 2005, I was 20 years old. So I think from age 20 to about 25, when I look back at my career, those are the 5 years where you could do whatever you want, you could eat whatever you want, you could sleep for 4 hours a night if you had to. And I always joke that the human body we're stubborn. We don't change until something makes us change or something bad happens, until you get an injury or until, doing your lifestyle, you finally start to slow down a little bit instead of being proactive and maybe learning and preparing for that next stage. We almost wait until something happens and then we change. So, and then basically 25 to 30 is where you start to learn, I can't do that stuff anymore, especially as a professional athlete. I'm going to have to start taking care of myself. I'm not going to be able to maybe stay out as long as I have in the past, or you just have to pick your spots a little bit better. So you start to learn there. And then basically from age 30 to 35, where I'm at now, I think you take both of those experiences and kind of combine it. And the biggest thing I've changed over the last 5 years is probably food and just being more aware of, sleep, prioritizing, how many things you say yes to. Obviously, you have a family, so a lot of those younger years too, you're only worrying about one person. I think as you get married and then have kids, you obviously have to share your time with more people. When you're playing every day, you have to really almost not be selfish, but just know what you need to do to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
When you say you've changed your food or your diet, what does that look like?
Just being more conscious, I think, to what
you're putting in,
what you put in, how much you eat.
You're not following like a keto diet or.
So it's funny. There's a group of like 5 or 6 of us that used a chef for the last 3 or 4 years, where it started off, he made us some meals in spring training, and then he started doing some software at home, and then we started paying for him to go on the road. Because honestly, on the road is harder to eat well than at home. We're staying in hotels.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't get more. The game ends sometimes at 10:30. You don't want to necessarily go out and either eat room service or go out to dinner at 11:30, midnight. People get carried away with diets, and people get carried away with, being strict. I think you have to find out something that works for you. And for me, it's all about moderation. And, everyone's like, you talk about the keto thing, and, there's a lot of those things out there now. I think you have to find out what works for you and just make sure that you follow it. But then I'll eat ice cream. As long as you don't do it every night, I think that's where people get in trouble. You're allowed to still do that stuff. It's just if you do it once or twice a week, it's okay, and you don't need to.
Yeah,
don't eat the whole thing of ice cream. Just have a couple bites, and so you learn that, and it's really changed the way I like my energy, the way I sleep, the way it's it's something that I'll continue to do. I think for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. You just seem so balanced, and I think it's because you're a Libra. Because September 28th is a Libra, and that's like you're so balanced. I mean, that's a very balanced approach to living.
I'm very type A, almost as Heather would say, it's like a gift and a curse for me, because I'm very organized. I need to have things, I need to lay things out. Like I write lists, I do things like that. I like to have things organized because I'm more productive when I'm that way. Where Heather's the other way, where I'll walk into a room and things will be everywhere, but I can ask her where something is.
And she knows
exactly where it's at. Also, I'm gone all the time. She's taking care of 2 kids by herself. Right. And, her free time is not existent at all. So it's funny to see how people are different, but things work differently. So for me, whether it's diet, whether it's the way I prepare for a game, I'm meticulous, and like I said, it's a gift and a curse sometimes. Sometimes if I could just let things go, it might be better for me. So it's always a work in progress.
How do you prepare for a game?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah, what happens?
Well, I can tell you exactly how I prepare for a game. So I usually leave the house sometime around 1:30. Every now and then it's earlier. Sometimes it's later. Every day for a home game, we stretch right around 4:30. So I usually get there by 2, a little bit after 2. I eat lunch. I'm done with lunch by 2:30. So that gives me 2 hours to do. I'll go to the training room. I'll do things. If I have some stuff that's banged up or I need some treatment, I do that. Then you go into the weight room, and I have to go through sort of an activation kind of thing to make sure I keep all my ailments away. And I call it the old man workout, where you spend more time getting ready to work out than you actually do working out. Usually at that point I'll have about 15 or 20 minutes of free time where I'll either go into the video room, or on your iPad now they have an app where you can watch the pitcher that you're going to face that night. So I'll usually do that and prepare that way. And then around 4 o'clock I'll go down to the batting cage, and start doing just my daily work that I do with the hitting coaches and things like that. And at 4:30 we stretch as a team, and then around 4:45 until about 5:30 you hit batting practice on the field. You take ground balls, you do your workout there. So then from 5:30 until I guess around 6, and then at 6 o'clock I'll get dressed for the game, and I'll go back to the weight room. Then I'll go through my 30-minute kind of preparation for the game, where it's more of the same exercises and maybe a quick lift to get your body ready. And then 6:30 I'll go back down to the cage and do my pregame stuff. And then usually we play at 7:05. I usually go out at 6:55 and run and do all the stuff on the field and get ready. And then 7:05 is game time. And then, you do that and you play. And then about 10:30 you're back in. You eat dinner. If you have to do any other treatment stuff, you do that. And you're home by midnight if you're lucky. Get some sleep, and then
back at it.
Do the exact same thing.
Next day.
If I'm at home, I'll wake up, and if it's during school, I'll wake up and take the girls to school.
Mm-hmm.
School has made it a little tricky, because Heather and the girls, when we were at home, they would come to all the games. Now during the week, if they have school, it's kind of silly for them to come.
Right.
The game that starts at 7, that's basically what time they're usually getting ready to go to bed. So you have to kind of find a balance between baseball and family. And it's interesting to see how, the kids adapt to anything. They've probably been, I know they've been more places than my parents have in their life already. Like Mackenzie, her favorite city is San Francisco. And people are like, your kids are ridiculous. They stay in nice hotels. They go there, but it's cool because those are things that I never had as a kid. And I think it, it lets them see other places, how places are different. She sees the Golden Gate Bridge on TV. She knows it's in San Francisco, which is really cool. And it's something that without baseball, I never would have been able to give them.
I've seen it firsthand. But you're a great dad.
Aww.
And how has parenthood changed you?
It's the greatest challenge you'll ever have, I think. And people are always like, oh, being a parent is so great. And it is. But there's some times where you're like, man, this is the worst thing I've ever had to do, You just have to be around. I think that's the one thing that my parents, but they would always make a point to ask how your day was. What'd you do today in school? Or how was this? Or how was that? And sometimes you can remember you and your brother being like, oh my God. But, those nights when you did want to talk about something,
they were there.
They were there. Just communication and being there. I think that's what my parents always taught me. Just be there for your kids, which is hard for me sometimes because I'm gone so much.
But Tricia and I have a theory on life about parents. And if you're blessed to have good parents, which both of us feel very lucky, and it sounds like you also had good parents, that you have that foundation in life that just sustains you, and you have less sort of issues as you go through life. And but it sounds like you had a remarkable mom. And dad.
Yep.
And so tell us a little bit about your mom. We know you started a foundation in her honor. She
was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 95. Both my parents grew up athletic. My dad played baseball, football, all that. He was a really good football player, got hurt his junior or senior year in high school, so kind of ended that. And he actually played baseball in college. And all my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family actually said my mom was the better athlete than my dad. She played lacrosse, basketball, field hockey, all that kind of stuff. So they were both very active people, always outside, always doing something. You said I was born in Washington. They actually owned a fitness center in Washington. They were always just about that kind of lifestyle. And then we moved to Virginia Beach because my mom got a teaching job there. So they sold the fitness center. They moved there.
Like teaching.
She taught special ed K through
yeah.
5. So she did that until she couldn't anymore with her MS. So we moved there. My dad kind of just found jobs for a while, and then he ended up getting a job with the city for Parks and Rec, and he was in charge of athletics at a recreation center there for 23 or 24 years before I kind of told him. By then I was well established, and I was like, Dad, you don't need to do this anymore. And then about that time is when he was starting to do more stuff with my mom at the beginning of that, when, that was starting to, I don't want to say get a little worse because we don't like to say that, but when things were starting to escalate on her side a little bit, it was just time for him not to work anymore. But yeah, like we were talking, they were always around. The one thing they always told us about all of those activities is like, listen, we'll drive you, but we're not going to drive you if you don't want to do it. Like, so if you want to do it, we're in. We're here for you. But, we don't want to hear you complain. If, I don't want to do this. And if you don't want to do it, you're not. But if we're going to take the time to drive you. And so it kind of taught us about commitment at an earlier age. But, they were just always there, I think. And just like everyone, you have times where you don't like your mom and dad. But through the good times and the bad times, I think they were just present, I think, is the most important thing.
Ryan, how did your mom's MS affect you growing up?
It took them, MS has come a long way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the research, just the information about the disease, the different types of diseases, it took them almost, I think, 2 years to diagnose her with them. They thought it was Lyme's disease. They didn't really know what was going on. So I think that was the hardest part for my parents at first. They didn't really know what it was, what to expect. And then when they finally kind of diagnosed her, obviously they told me and my brother, and they said, listen, it could be a lot worse. At that time, they were like, she's still going to live for a long time. It's just, we don't know what's going to happen over this next period of time. So, when you're 11 and your brother's 9, I mean, it's obviously a tough, nobody ever wants to hear anything about their parents or loved ones. But they are always kind of positive, like, hey, we need to look on the bright side. It could be a lot worse. And we're just going to deal with it. And I think from there we kind of did. She continued to teach for, I don't know how long, probably 2-3 years, to the point where she would start to get tired at the end of the day. She would have to use, a cane, then a walker, then a wheelchair, and then to the point where it was just, she couldn't do it anymore. So me and my brother, obviously my dad's still working. Me and my brother had to learn to do more stuff around the house that you, by then, probably a 14, 15, 16-year-old me would not have to know. And then,
right,
a 11, 12, 13-year-old Sean wouldn't have to know either. But I think, like, now we both know how to cook. We all kind of had to learn that about, kind of speed up life a little bit. And at the time, you didn't think of it that way. But I think it's obviously shaped who we are as people, and made us a little bit more responsible maybe, and I don't want to say more appreciative, because I think everyone loves life. You don't need to have something like that happen to make you love life, but it kind of puts things in perspective a little bit, and makes you be able to kind of shrug off the small things a little bit better that maybe other people kind of dwell on for too long.
Mm-hmm. And how's your mom now? You said she
does well. I mean, she's been wheelchair bound fully for maybe close to 15 years now. I don't know the exact time. So she does well. I think, like we said when we first, we always glass half full instead of glass half empty. I think it could be worse. There's a lot of people who are diagnosed with MS, and things happen a lot quicker than they did. Right. I think the good thing with her is, her mental clarity, her eyesight, things like that are still very, very good. So phone calls, things like that. They recently got one of those Alexas, which is so she can tell Alexa to call people.
Yeah.
So that's been awesome for her, because the biggest thing for anyone is the independence factor of it. I think to just think about what you do on a daily basis as an adult. You can do whatever you want, and I think when something like that gets taken away, that's the hardest thing for the person and the people around them. Especially me and my mom are very similar as far as the type A and that's where I get that from. And I can't imagine not being able to do the stuff that I do around the house, and then having to tell someone to do it, because then you feel like you're just wearing these people out, but it's, so I think that's the toughest part for her for sure. And then, but she handles it well. I mean, she, the position that she's in, we always say it's, it's amazing what she does, because so many people would be miserable, I think. So she just, she always has a great attitude, and it's, it's pretty special.
And your dad must be pretty remarkable to be your caretaker.
Yeah, he grinds it out as well, because I think, obviously the situation is tough for him. I mean, nobody wants to see their wife, loved one, anyone go through something like that. But then once that wears off and you're back in real life, you have to figure out how to make it work. And we're lucky they've lived in Virginia Beach for, they've been in Sandbridge now for almost 30 years. So the support group that we have down there, the foundation is a lot about finding a cure, but we also do stuff with, caregivers or helping people try and, just enhance their situation for everyday life. But we're lucky to have the support group we have in Virginia Beach. And with as much as I'm gone and as much as, they're there, I think they don't want to bother me with it. They want me and my brother to be able to live our lives. So for them to have the group that they have there has been a lifesaver for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you are married to the lovely Heather. She plays a really important role with the Nationals, or at least with the families, and is a great mentor and support to other families on the team.
Well, so Major League Baseball, it's funny. It's because, the wives all go through the same thing. I mean, their husbands are gone. Basically I'm home for a week and gone for a week for 7 months out of the year. So I guess she's looked up upon by the wives and people here, obviously because I've been here for a long time. So, but she grew up here too. So basically any questions kind of go to her. Our team, we're very lucky. It's a great group of wives and families. They all get along. When we're gone, and if their life is easier or better or anything that we can do, and more importantly, the organization can do to help them have an easier go at it, it obviously makes it better for them, but then it makes it better for us, because we're not worried about what our wives and kids are doing during the game. We know they're taken care of. So she does a good job with, obviously welcoming new people to the team, letting them know anything that we can do to help. We know the area inside and out. We know we have so many resources and connections for people that we've kind of become, the guys all ask me a lot of questions, and then the wives or the girlfriends or whoever always ask Heather. So, but like I said, the organization does a really good job as well. I mean, the girls love going to the games, not to see me play, friends. But to hang out with their baseball friends. And, they can all go into the family room during the game. They actually have, babysitting and childcare down there. So if the wives want to drop the kids off and actually go
watch a game,
well, act like they're watching a game. But it's such a busy life that, they're basically doing everything when we're gone. There's times where, and I tell Heather this, I'll come in, we'll be on the road, and I'll come in from batting practice. So like 5:00, and you pick up your phone and it has her name and it's text messages, and there's like 12 text messages. You're like, oh boy, it was a tough day at home. And you kind of read the text messages and it goes through like the whole emotional roller coaster. But like, and I'll go home and she'll go out to dinner with her girlfriends, or she'll go, they'll go to brunch or something. And I'm home with them for like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, she does this all day long for a week or sometimes 10 days. And it's amazing what they do.
You've been, as you mentioned, and as we all know, you've been with the Nats for 15 years. Can you express how joyful and grateful you were when that last out was made in Houston?
It was, it's just been such a crazy ride, decade and a half where, we were so bad. And then we've been, from 05 to '08, we were owned by Major League Baseball. The Lerners hadn't bought the team yet. So I always say those 3 years don't even really count.
Mm-hmm.
There's no chance you're going to win. It was basically just kind of getting the team down here.
Yeah.
Almost getting it settled in.
going.
And then once the Lerners bought the team and we got the new stadium, I feel like that's kind of when the organization really started. But then from 08 to 12, it was tough. We were losing 95, 100 games. But, at the same time, I was 23, 24 years old playing in the big leagues, and I could, losing was terrible, but I just felt lucky to be in the situation I was in. So I kind of just, tried to do the best that I could, get the most experience that I could, and then kind of go from there. And then from basically 2012 on is when, we started winning, and then the expectations and kind of all culminated with obviously the run that we went on this year. And just, it was, when the last out was made, it's almost like you couldn't believe it. And
did it feel like you were just kind of
forever.
going through the motions at that moment? Like it just sort of was going through, you didn't feel it, or did you feel it?
It's hard to explain like what you were feeling at that moment. I think when you've worked so hard for something, when you've done it like we were talking about since you were 4 or 5 years old, and at that point nobody's thinking about that, but you think about all the things that have happened in your life, what you've done to kind of get to the top, to get to the pinnacle of what you've worked on. It's it was pretty special.
Yeah. Who are your mentors, or who do you consider your mentors, and were you imagining what they were doing when you won?
Growing up in Virginia Beach, going to the University of Virginia, being drafted here, I basically have spent my whole life within like a 5-hour circle. So the amount of people that have, helped me get to where I'm at, taught me whether it's one thing or 100 things. I think that's why there's not, you have your core, obviously your family, your coaches, people that have helped you. But for me, it's been such a collection of people that it was more of a group effort than any one or two people. But it was fun to see a lot of the text messages and a lot of the calls, and it was a heck of a ride, man.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Talking to so many people here about how everyone was a zombie at work for a month because the games are so late and people are going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning and waking up at 6:30 to go to work. And but it's pretty cool to think back that kids and their parents, like it's just a memory that people will share that nobody can ever take away from you.
Yeah.
Now that you've reached the top, do you want to keep playing baseball?
For me, I still love playing, but more importantly, I say enjoy doing. I don't know if I enjoy it all the time, but doing like what we were talking about earlier, like the grind of the day, like because it's the easiest part of the day for me now is playing the game. The hardest part is preparing yourself to play the game, and the hardest part is now, the off season. The older you get, the more you have to do. You have to prepare more now than you do during the season. So basically, Monday through Friday, I'm doing something every day now to get ready for basically the season. And then, the schedule that we talked about, basically from 1:30 to game time and beyond, is an everyday thing. And, if you take 1 or 2 days off, that's when you either get hurt or your performance dips. So I think the second that I don't have that passion for not the game, but the stuff that makes you be able to perform in the game, that's when it'll be time to go home. It was funny the other day, because I still am not signed, and Me and Heather were talking, and I'm like, man, the longer that I'm not signed, and I played like a round of golf down in Virginia Beach with my dad, my friends, and I'm like, man, this is kind of nice. And then going back to the type A personality, I've been home. It's always in the off season where you're home for a month or two, and then Heather's like, you need to go do something. You need to get out of the house. And I'm like, well, like, this is kind of nice. I could play some golf. I could,
You could be home.
maybe I just won't play. And Heather's like, you need to play. You need to play. She looked at me and she's like, you need to play. And I'm like, all right, well, we'll figure something out. But
I have to ask you, you've been outnumbered by women in the Zimmerman household. So are you ready for some male companionship?
yeah, glitter and sparkles and pink and purples. And I always tell the story where I got to the field one day and I was undressing to put on just, my workout stuff, and took my underwear off, and I went to hang my underwear up, and there was a unicorn sticker on my, and that was like the first time where I was like, I am completely surrounded, completely outnumbered. But it's great. Girls are awesome. When you have, before you have a kid, I think you have an opinion on it. And then once you realize, I think you get a new sense of just, you don't care anymore. And everyone honestly says, would you be upset if you didn't have a boy? And truly, you don't care. So having the two girls has been really fun. I've learned a lot. But interestingly enough, the first one for sure is pure daddy's girl. I think me and her are tight, and her and Heather already fight like they're teenagers. Like she's a teen. Heather always jokes that she's 16 instead of 6, because like sometimes we'll be laying in bed at night. She's like, man, I had an argument with Mackenzie today that she's like, I thought this is like, I feel like she's a teenager. So
just wait.
Yeah, that's what but me and her, we could honestly go away for a week, and we go see movies all the time. We do things. So it's a relationship that, I had a brother growing up I've never had. So it's been fun. It's been fun to learn. It's been fun to see both of them. And then Hayden is completely opposite. She's a hurricane, and she's a maniac. So it's fun to see their different personalities. But it's been I've learned a lot about girl things and the Disney princesses and all of that. So it's been a lot of fun.
So we've established that you're a great baseball player and a great family man. What's something you're not good at?
Man. I'm not good at a lot of things. I think not everything has to be perfect, I think and I've been such a perfectionist a lot of athletes are like that. That's the way I was taught. That's the way, that's been ingrained in me since I was 8 or 9 years old when I started playing competitive baseball. Like, I've never really been someone who brings baseball home, or like if I have a bad game, it doesn't matter. But I think learning how to kind of separate baseball from family life, or when me and Heather go out to dinner or things like that. We talk about baseball a lot, but I think maybe learning how to just let things go sometimes. I always used to, it wouldn't bother me, but I wanted everything to go perfectly, that you'd almost get bent out of shape about some stuff that really didn't matter. And I think Heather sort of taught me how to let that stuff go and just enjoy the ride a little bit more.
But that's a really good point, that idea of sort of enjoying the ride, because it's not here forever.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're 25, it might feel like, you don't know where you are, but I got some years. And this is...
Yeah, and I think that's what made last year so special too. Like, so many great players have never won a championship. And so for that to happen kind of at this point in my career,
awesome.
When you really don't know what's going to happen over the next, year, 2 years, whatever it is, that was pretty cool. Just the timing of it. And it didn't look like it was going to happen this year. It was, the years past we've been supposed to win, and those were the years where we were, the favorites to win. And this year we started so terribly, and, kind of turn it around, it was and to do it with that group of guys, you know, I've said it a lot. It was a special group of guys. It was a veteran, kind of older group with some young guys in there sprinkled in as well. But, you know, a lot of us were in the same situation. You know, it might be your last chance.
Yeah.
Sports and baseball, I always say more than others, more than any, I think parallel life.
Yeah.
You fail a lot in baseball. You're tested mentally a lot in baseball. Probably think about quitting a lot in baseball. You know, there's some times where it just basically dominates you.
Yeah.
And you have to keep getting back up. And that was like the story of our season. So when I talk to kids, I always tell them, you know, baseball is such a great sport to play because it teaches you how to fail, because life is about failure. I mean, I think, and in this day and age with social media and Instagram, like, everything's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, everything that people post is perfect. And I think that's the challenge with younger kids, is they think everyone's life is perfect. And, you know, failure is like the biggest, for me, what I was taught is probably the most important part of life, because that's where you learn, you know, obviously who you are as a human and as yourself, but also how to react to that kind of stuff. And some of these kids now, it's like it's the end of the world. And it's like, you just got to get up and keep going. Like, that's what our parents went through. That's what their parents went through. And I think
what we went through.
Unfortunately, like, I don't want to sound like an old guy on a soapbox right now, but, you know, when you have kids, you start thinking about this kind of stuff, because, you know, you want them to be able to deal with that stuff, because that's what makes you a good person.
Yeah, resilient.
And I feel like, I don't know if kids are guarded from it, like you need to go through that stuff. Like, that's what makes you stronger. That's what, you know, gives you your values, and that's where you learn who you are.
Right. What do you see yourself? I mean, say you're 60 now. Where do you see your life as being? Maybe 70, because 60 is still really young.
Right.
Yeah, because we're 60. Okay.
Maybe 70.
It's funny, me and Heather, when the girls go to sleep, we'll have a couple glasses of wine every now and then if it's the off season, we don't have anything going on. Usually, sometimes you'll have more than a couple glasses of wine. That's when we start talking about when we're going to be 60 and 70. And we'll be like, man, you know, we'll sell the house. We'll get like a row house down and, you know, and actually be able to do stuff for our own. And then, like, we'll finish the conversation. We're like, it's like 30 years from now. what are we doing? But I think, you know, the next however many years are about kind of your family and your kids and sort of the conversation we just had, teaching them how to be, I think more importantly, just teaching them how to be a good person. And, you know, from there, they're going to make decisions. At some point, you got to let them be them, you know?
Yeah.
And, it'll be interesting. I mean, we're a ways away from that.
Right, but it's fun
those
to
are the
see.
conversations that go along with the row house conversations after you've had
between now and
2 or 3 glasses of wine and you're solving all the world's problems.
So, Ryan, who would you say is your favorite baseball player or role model that maybe you might have patterned yourself after, or is there one?
Growing up, it was 2 guys. It was Cal Ripken Jr. and Chipper Jones. Cal was, growing up in Virginia Beach, Baltimore was basically the closest team, and then obviously Cal was like the man. I think, you know, playing with the same team, just the way he played the game. He played every day, obviously, with the streak that he had. And you just never heard really a bad thing about him. And then Chipper was kind of the young guy when I was coming up. The Braves were always on TV at night when I was at home. He was he wore his pants up. When in Little League, I wore my pants up for Chipper Jones. So every kid has kind of their guy that they follow. So I think Cal was more the guy that I looked up to because he was, you know, the model of professionalism. Everyone looked up to him as just the way he went about his business. And then Chipper Jones was kind of the new, you know, young guy that was the next great thing, and he was exciting to watch. And so those 2 guys growing up were my guys.
Did you meet them, or have you met them, or have they met you?
Yes. So actually my debut, September 1st of 2005, was in Atlanta. So that was, I didn't play that day, but I remember going out there for batting practice, and Chipper Jones was obviously there hitting, and you're like, man, this is a guy you looked up with, and now you're on the same field. And then I never played against Cal, but I've had a chance to meet him a bunch and we've done a couple charity things together, and I've been lucky to meet and do a lot of things with a lot of baseball guys, and you realize that there's some good guys that do some great things, and just the stories and just the crazy lives that we live, and they went through the same stuff with their families, and so it's a pretty tight brotherhood where we give each other advice, we can help each other. But those two guys and being able to meet them and kind of hang with them over the last 10 to 15 years has been a pleasure.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
I always go back. I mean, my mom and dad said a lot of things. I think the best advice, I'll just boil it down to them, I guess. Maybe they always told me and my brother, I guess, to work the hardest when no one is watching. Because I think, especially in youth sports, you'll go to these practices, you'll see, and everyone practices hard and does things. And when you're there in front of the coaches or when you're at tryouts and things like that, and it's funny, you'll go talk to kids now, and the parents are the craziest thing. They come up to you and they're like, what can I do? What do I need to do to make my son or daughter, a Major League Baseball player? And I'm like, nothing. You can do nothing, pretty much. Like,
just back off a little bit.
I mean, honestly, I want to tell them, like, pretty much they either kind of got it. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the talent is God-given or whatever you want to call it. Obviously, hard work goes into it, but I think that's what kind of separates. And it's not just in sports; it's in anything that you do. I think if you're at the office, everyone's going to work hard when their boss is there. If maybe you're in your cubicle or wherever and nobody's watching when you're really grinding it out. And, if you want to get ahead in life, you got to work harder than people. Nothing's given to you. So I think, my dad always kind of said, work harder when nobody's watching. And, whether it's you're doing something at home or whether you stay after practice. And, that's the time where you really maybe get ahead or you move forward. Everyone's going to work hard when they're supposed to.
So is there a book that you think everyone should read?
Heather's mom for Christmas actually just got me this, is it Mike Rowe, I think? Is that his name? Or the guy who used to do Dirty Jobs. He does a podcast and he brings in people. But the book, it's called The Way I Heard It. And it's these short, literally like 3 or 4 page of kind of his favorite interviews from the podcast.
Oh,
and
fun.
he starts it, and he doesn't tell you who the person is.
Oh.
And you start reading it, and it's like a mystery till you get to the end. And then he tells you who the person is. And it's anyone, like the one I read last night was about a baker on the Titanic.
Oh, how
Who-
interesting.
Basically, when he heard the iceberg, and he felt the ship, he knew
It was
the ship was going down. So everyone was panicking. He said he just sat at the bar and drank and got hammered. And then, like, as he was sitting there, he started thinking, I should probably go help people. So he filled up like a flask and he took all the bakery stuff that he made and went around and started giving out stuff, and then was helping people off the ship. He could have got off the ship so many times. Didn't, but just helped women, children, all that off. And then he said he climbed to the very top of the ship and was basically the last person off. And because he was so hammered, he was in the water for 3.5 hours, and he survived because his blood was so thin from the alcohol that hypothermia couldn't set in. So he got saved. So it's like,
oh wow.
So it's a fun book, and it's only a chapter.
It's short, yeah.
A chapter takes you maybe less than 10 minutes.
That's
to
great,
read.
right?
So you can really do it. So that's good.
That's fun.
That
That's a
is
fun
fun.
one.
And then do you have a favorite quote?
I'll go back to my parents again. My dad would always say, luck is preparation met by opportunity. So everyone says, oh, you're lucky, and oh, you're unlucky. And it's like, I mean, I believe in, obviously, luck. There's lucky things that happen. Like a scratch-off ticket is lucky if you win.
Right.
Can't prepare to win a scratch-off ticket.
Right.
But everyone says, oh, well, look at this guy. In his career, everything's gone his way. Well, I think you kind of make your own luck. I mean, if you work hard and prepare, you might not know what you're preparing for at the time, But if you're out there working hard and you're doing things and you're making yourself better, when the opportunity arises, you don't know what the opportunity is, but you're going to be ready for it. And it's because you've worked hard. You know, you weren't lazy. You weren't sitting around waiting for something good to happen. You were preparing for it, even though at the time you didn't know what you were preparing for. I think, you know, oh, he's lucky, or oh, he's unlucky, or like, I don't really believe in that stuff. I think, you know, you're either going to go attack life, or you're going to sit back, and those are the unlucky people. Oh, I'm just going to sit back and wait for something. Oh, I never catch any breaks.
Something.
You never prepare yourself to take advantage of the breaks that you do,
Right.
so you always fail. It's, you know, stop blaming other people. Get going. So he's always told me that, and you know, because everyone based sport, oh, he's lucky, he made a lucky shot, or, you know, Michael Jordan, you know, things like, no, because those guys worked, and you know, when the opportunity arose, they were ready. They didn't know that they were going to be ready for it, but you know, you got to be ready to take advantage of your opportunities, because you only get so many.
Right. Well, Ryan, it's been such a joy
so
having
much
you on
fun.
Health Gig.
Yeah.
You're amazing. We're so proud of you.
We are so proud
And
of you.
thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, so appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Health Gig. We loved having you with us. We hope you'll tune in again next week. In the meantime, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast and follow us on healthgigpod.com. I'm Trisha.
And I'm Doro.
Be well.